Hello and welcome. This is a video about the prophecy in Daniel 8. I'll start with verse 19 as it tells us when this will take place. And he said, Behold, I will make thee known what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. We know Daniel is written about the end times, and this says these events will happen in the last end of the indignation, so it may be the final point before the judgment begins. Then verse 3 and 20 tells us the first part of this prophecy. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but the one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So this is Media and Persia in the end times, and this would be equivalent to Iran today. It mentions 2 horns, so 2 rulers, and Iran does have 2 rulers, a president and a supreme leader. The supreme leader is more powerful, so that would be the higher horn, and from this it seems the president will already be in power when this specific supreme leader takes office. Then verse 4 tells us what this country will do. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. So Iran will start attacking and invading the surrounding countries and will be unstoppable. Then verse 5 and 21 say, And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So now we have a different country coming into the mix, the king of Grecia. Now it could be Greece, but the actual name is Javan, which I personally understand to be more likely to be Turkey. So from that point of view, Turkey then comes onto the scene. Now it says about the first king. Well, Turkey's had more than one ruler in the last century. However, this is Turkey in the end times, and only recently would the leader of Turkey be considered a king after he managed to get more power. So the first king of Turkey is currently in place. Verses 6 and 7 then tell us Turkey attacks Iran and defeats him. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Then we are told in verse 8 and 22 that, Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. So when Turkey attacks Iran and wins, the leader of Turkey will perish. Once that happens, Turkey splits into 4, with 4 rulers coming out of it. This is also spoken of in Daniel 11. Then verse 9 and 23 tells us about the little horn, the one also spoken of in Daniel chapter 7. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So now we know that the little horn spoken of in Daniel chapter 7 will come up from one of these 4 kingdoms formed when Turkey is split, and that he will enter Israel. Verse 10 tells us this little horn, or king of fierce countenance, will persecute the elect. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. And verses 11 and 24 tell us, Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. So we know this person will be incredibly powerful and will kill the elect. Verses 12 and 25 also tell us he will be prosperous while he's doing these things, but in the end he will be destroyed by Jesus. And an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practised and prospered. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So in summary, we know from this prophecy that it will be at the last end of the indignation, so this is possibly just before God's judgment begins. The kings of Iran. They currently have two leaders, the president and the supreme leader. The supreme leader is more powerful and assumes office after the president is already in power. And we can also look at Daniel 11 for this. Daniel 11 states that it will be the fourth king. So we can gather from that this may be the fourth supreme leader of Iran. Iran attacks other countries in the Middle East, and none can stop them. The king of Javan, or Turkey, the first king, is now present, and he will stop Iran. He stands up to Iran and defeats them, but afterwards he perishes. And Turkey will then split into 4 kingdoms. And from one of these 4 kingdoms a leader will arise. That leader will bring desolation to Israel and be destroyed by Jesus. Thank you for listening, and God bless.